Welcome to the March to a Million podcast with Greg DuPont, founder of the Wealth Solutions Network. In this podcast, Greg shares his journey to positively impact 1 million lives by creating an army of financially minded attorneys who embrace an expanded role in their clients' lives. Greg and his guests challenge the status quo in the legal profession and the financial services industry, and show attorneys how they can improve their lives, provide greater value to their clients, and experience greater professional satisfaction. Join us in this movement and strengthen your business by learning how to solve your clients' most pressing financial problems.
Hello and welcome to another March to a Million podcast with your host, Greg DuPont. Now, we've got a ringer today, and when I say ringer, I mean somebody who's actually incredibly well-known and somebody who both Greg and I look up to a lot. Keynote speaker, has been all over the place, and is actually a instant bestseller with his new book, Trust in a Split Second. It is Ari Galper. He is our guest today. And just very quickly, you can get a free copy of this book to go to arigalper.com/book for attorneys. We'll make sure that we have that in the show notes. But he has been featured in CEO Magazine, Forbes, Inc. Magazine, Family Law Magazine. But he is considered a contrarian, which is going to be a lot of fun to listen to, in the legal industry. And in his book, everything you learned about selling will be turned upside down. No more chasing, no pressure, no closing. With that, Greg, take it away.
Thank you, Matt. Ari, I don't know if I can add anything to that, but thank you for taking some time out to meet with us and have this conversation. You and I started working together a while ago, and I'm proud to be able to have you as part of my team in this March to Million, and more importantly, as we continue our effort to improve the way that attorneys communicate their value, and in the context of Wealth Solutions Network, how that value goes so much deeper than just doing estates and things like that, but rather bringing trust to the equation. And so what I want to talk about today is, kind of your observations over the years. First, Matt gave a great introduction, but I'm sure you have a few things that you'd like to highlight there. But it's trust, and trust in an instant. And you've taught me so much over our time together that changed just the little things here and there. And so I'm looking forward to sharing this with the members of WSN. So, Ari, tell me, why is sales really a struggling business, and why is there a trust gap, as you like to call it?
Well, I'd call it a trust recession, so to speak. And look, I think we're all in the same quadrant of profile. We're all kind of a high intellectual property experts, kind of business attorneys, all of us. And we sometimes get put into a position where we have to, quote, sell ourselves to prove our value. And the only anchor that we have for how to do that model comes from the 1980s sort of know, like, and trust model that we were taught over the years. So a lot of us default to that, and we end up doing what I call free education, free consulting. We attempt to show people our value as a way to convince them to hire us. And that was all fantastic and worked great pre-COVID, when the world was less commoditized and there was less of everyone around. Now what's happened in the last 4 or 5 years, as I define the trust recession, is that we're now in a commoditized world. Your customer client has lots of options of people who can become their attorney besides yourself. And the real key question is, how do you distinguish yourself? Sure, you can have extra degrees, you can specialize in a certain industry, you can have more experience than anybody else. When it comes down to the actual conversation, the missing element, I believe, and I'll make a case for it today, is how to build trust with your potential clients on that first consultation. And trust was never taught in law school, except for the other word, trusts, which is how to do trust, but never how to build trust. And that's what we're talking about today.
And you and I have similar roots. You've been in the system much longer than I have, and with regard to the Dan Kennedy world and information first marketing, and just how impactful that has been for many people, and many people in my tribe are going down the same paths. And I don't think you're saying that that path is not appropriate. It's we've kind of gone too far into that. Can you pull that out a little bit for me?
Sure. So information wise, sure, as a lead magnet to get the opportunity, you need something, quote as bait, to get someone to get to a first meeting with you. That's the whole information first lead generation process, which is works fantastically. But once you get somebody to a first consultation or first meeting, you do not do information first at all. Instead, you unpack their problem first. Because they're already coming to you assuming you have the credibility. They know you're an attorney, they know you're for real. Otherwise, they wouldn't show up. They've got to you through your marketing, fantastic. Now they're in front of you, either on Zoom or in a live meeting. Now, is your job to provide information? No. Your job is to help unpack and peel back the onion, so to speak, around their issue to a deep extent to where they feel you understand them. And that's the whole layer that we're talking about today, which is very untraditional and uncommon for attorneys to even think about this, because they believe their job is to gather facts, assess, and recommend.
So part of the know, like, and trust model,
Yes.
Hey, how you doing, buddy? I see you're from Ohio State. We got affinity. Let's work off of that. So help me define the distinction that you're making there.
Sure.
Between coming in and building
Sure.
a relationship and coming in and assuming a relationship.
Okay, great. Great question. So real relationships take time. Real ones. The friends you have, the spouses you have, those took months, years to build really real friendships with people. If you attempt to build a relationship with someone in a short amount of time, like in one meeting, they know it's not real. They know it's inauthentic, and they know it's designed to be sales oriented for you to like them. See, we believe that if they don't like us, they're not going to hire us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The irony of all this is they don't have to like you to hire you. They just have to trust you to hire you. They don't have to become your friend. They don't have to appeal to your personality. There doesn't have to be chemistry because they know it's manufactured in such a short amount of time. Yeah, we've been taught that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, yeah. Many people make a lot of money selling those type of selling systems, don't they?
It's the traditional model, which still is out there, and everyone believes that's the way it should be. But if you're still doing that, I wouldn't be surprised if you're chasing ghosts, what I call ghosts, people who you have a great meeting with, great chemistry with, and at the end they say to you, I want to think about it. And they can't decide.
So I want to draw a nuance with you. As you and I have talked privately with what I'm doing with attorneys in WSN,
Yes.
expanding the scope of problems that they solve for the client.
Yes.
And nominally people come in to an estate plan attorney for estate plan. But what your process does and what your teachings are is, as you say, unpack that onion or what have you, is there's an outcome that they're looking for from that engagement. And that outcome is not necessarily that it's a trust. That outcome is secure growth of their assets and transfer to their kids without unnecessary risk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what you've been working with me on, and what I want to and have the listening understand, is when you start looking deeper, looking for what the real problem, what they really are after, that's when the rest of the equation just flows from the conversation of uncovering, as you call it, the truth of their situation.
Yeah, because there's two levels of connection here. One is intellectual and one is emotional. The intellectual part is, what do you want to achieve here? What are your goals? Who do you want to take care of? That's pretty transactional in nature. If you're an estate attorney, you know what you're doing, you know what the process is there. But that's not building trust with them by talking to them about at the intellectual level about what they're trying to achieve. That's their future goals. Instead, what you have to do is you have to reverse engineer and go to the core problem they're trying to solve in the back of their mind. They haven't told you yet because they don't trust you yet. You have to be able to basically go what I call below the iceberg. When they say to you, I'm here for X, most people assume X is the full picture. Now, we might do some fact finding, but fact finding is not trust building. What you have to do is go behind the problem and give them permission to express to you, and you have to be a guide with them like a doctor and a patient to diagnose and facilitate their ability to articulate the truth and their core reason why they want to solve their problem, right? It's kind of like a patient going to the doctor saying, my shoulder hurts. Doctor says, well, let's do an x-ray first before I determine what your problem is. So it's that kind of concept.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm proud to say that that I'm getting your training to learn how to pull that stuff out. So we don't want to give too many of the secrets away here, because that's house secrets, But what I want to kind of draw into a little bit on that is when you're trying to find the truth of their situation. If you're not coming in with a preconceived notion that I am trying to sell A, B, or C, whether it is a revocable living trust or an life insurance policy, if you're there trying to get the core of what their problem is, they may not know what it is. And part of your methodology helps us kind of divorce ourselves from the outcome, to ask the questions, to try to get to the truth of their situation. And
well, what you're saying,
experience is when you get to the truth of their situation, then that's where the trust comes in.
Correct. What you're saying there is that, and I'll reiterate this, the key is not making any assumptions that what they're telling you is the full picture, because they themselves can articulate everything on their own at first, and also letting go of the goal, your goal of making that sale. That's not going to be easy, because when we have a bite on the hook, we have an interested party in front of us, our instinct is, I hope this turns into a client. And when you do that, your mindset starts operating from your perspective, not from their perspective. As opposed to our view of the world is when they come in to see you and they're saying, my problem is X, you have to say to yourself and be skeptical and say, well, I hear what you're saying, but let's see if there could be a Y in there I haven't seen yet. Right? You can't assume just because they're telling you what the problem is, that's the full picture. It's like a doctor assuming the patient says, my shoulder hurts, and he says, okay, great, I'll get some medicine for the shoulder. No, he says, let's get you an x-ray, let's get you an MRI, let me see the full picture, and I'll tell you what the source of the problem is. So it's about shifting the positioning to more of authority, and they're not. And that takes grace, elegance, and what I call trust-based languaging, phraseology to use for them to feel comfortable with you. Because the irony of all this at the end of the day is they're not hiring you on your efficacy, because they can't see your efficacy until after they're a client. So they're not hiring you on that. Then what are they hiring you on? They're hiring you in this day and age on how much trust you convey. Not that you're not trustworthy, but it's how good you are at your languaging to connect with them where they trust you and they feel open enough to say to you, this, I'm in. Let's do this. Took me about 3 seconds to say that,
You mentioned a couple things in that I really wanted to highlight. And first is, having experienced it personally, the freedom of not needing to make that sale. That getting yourself divorced from the outcome and being able to focus on the person. And when you've done that, when you make that shift, then you find you connect with more people and you end up making more clients with having the predetermined outcome being what you're focusing on.
It's so ironic, isn't it? Yeah. When you let go of the sale, you make more sales. It doesn't sound even possible in our mind. But when you let go of the tension in the back of your mind, you let go of your goal and you are present with them and centered, and they can see you do not have a hidden agenda. They can feel that from you a mile away. They can just tell, and emotionally it clicks, and they say to themselves, I can trust him. Because what people are battling out there now in this economy is what I call indecisiveness. The inability to say, yes, I'm in, to make that decision. And the reason why they hesitate is because there's no clear path to trusting the person, because the person puts all these little elements in between them and the trust process, like education, consulting, fact-finding, relationship building, which confuses the buyer.
I remember when we were watching tape of one of my conversations, and you're like, Greg, at this point, 5 minutes into our conversation, it was a go or no go kind of position, and of course I didn't proceed appropriately, and we burned another couple of appointments afterwards, and ultimately got nowhere. I knew it, but I was still trying things out. But I also want to kind of circle back in for the WSN member. Part of the beauty of the WSN process is we've got the tools so that your average case value increases exponentially by focusing on the problem and having a broader array of solutions. And the virtuous cycle that builds is, okay, there's less pressure on each engagement to make that engagement work.
Yeah. The interesting thing is when you let yourself go, let the pressure go off the back of your shoulders, and you know how to engage them in a different way down the iceberg with these questions, and then you onboard them with a roadmap process, then there's something effortless about that. It just feels, there's just no tension there at all. And what you're doing is you're allowing them to buy you versus you sell them. That is a mindset shift in itself. And it's not for the faint-hearted. It takes someone who is open-minded, willing to defy industry norms. Norms means averages. Most folks are average in their results because they follow the industry norms. We're talking about defying the norms to accelerate your speed of success using all your solutions and a methodology here that's innovative and non-traditional.
Yeah, and part of what I like to share with members of WSN is, I've had the 18 years of School of Hard Knocks trying to figure out how to do all of this, right? And I went through a phase a few years ago in and around the COVID era where I thought to myself, damn, I need to be better at sales. I'm seeing all these people and I'm not closing any deals. So I went down the path of all of the major sales systems and never felt genuine. And then I'm talking to a prospect, X years ago, and I'm doing my routine. And he stops me and he's like, "Hey, Greg, nice upfront contract." I think, oh, all right. For those that don't know, there's a whole system built around getting them to agree to certain outcomes at the beginning of the thing. I'm like, all right, boy, was that transparent. And that's the beauty of what you teach, which is, consistent, I believe, with a true fiduciary approach, which is what we preach in WSN, that you're building trust and you're not pushing them into a deal. It's a very clear 5 minutes into that conversation with that guy, it was clear that there was no pain that he really wanted to deal with, and it was just going to be trying to pull them along into a sale. And that's what you have found through your years of experience and your training and probably some School of Hard Knocks of your own. Just doesn't work anymore.
No, I think in this day and age now, people have to feel that they are not being pulled down a process anymore. That's what happened to you when that person recognized a technique, which is pretty common out there, to try and box somebody in for a decision, which is pressure. And so what we're talking about here is having a scaffolding, a structure underneath the process without having to do things that are uncomfortable or unnatural, to the extent where the other person can basically feel comfortable I'll give an example. I'll share one example of our languaging, which is a common phrase you might say in our world, which is you say to somebody who's interested, you say, where would you like to go from here? Which allows them to say, let's move forward, versus you attempt to say, hey, do you want to get started? Here's my process. You start to move forward. You have to create enough space for them to step into it so they own it and they feel good about the decision. You don't have to put any work into to convincing them to do that.
And that phrase this year is as impactful for my business as the phrase I learned last year, which is don't ever ask them what they think about something, but ask them how they feel about something. And those are the little nuggets that make the difference. It's amazing how just a few words is all the difference in the world.
I'll share a couple other ones. I'd ask all your listeners here to never again, as of today, use the word follow-up. Follow-up is a sales word. It demeans your authority. Instead, what you say is, I'm just giving you a call to see if you have any feedback on our previous conversation, any feedback on our last meeting. See, feedback's going reverse, away from the pressure. Follow-up is chasing them for the sale. That one switch alone will engage them to open up and say to themselves, wow, this guy's so different. He's not pursuing me. He's not chasing me. He just wants to know the truth.
And the other one you wanted to share?
The other one was the word interested. It's a very common sales word, is would you be interested? Instead you want to use this phrase, would you be open? The word open doesn't force them into a yes or no. You see, it's not binary. It gives them a third option. Lets them process and think. And the interesting thing about this process is they're judging you and hiring you on your languaging. They're assessing, based upon what you're conveying to them in these words, this feeling of resonance. Can I connect to him? Can I feel good working with him? Do I trust him? And that's the layer that we're trying to get to here, make that breakthrough.
In a second here, I'm going to ask Matt to come back on because I like to bring him on as kind of the fly on the wall. He's listened to our conversation. He's always, he's not as upfront as he should be with his level of expertise on these things, but I'm sure he's going to have a couple of insightful questions to ask that would also be helpful. But before I do that, Ari, as we kind of start towards wrapping up here, anything else that you would like to make sure that you share with the listeners?
I would just say that if you're in a situation right now where you have inbound opportunity coming your way and you're getting in front of opportunities and they're qualified and you're not converting at 100%, then the issue is not them. The issue is you. The issue is your mindset and your way you're approaching them. And if you're not open to changing that thinking around your current approach, you'll keep losing these great people who are coming your way through your fantastic marketing. So I would just suggest, for folks to step forward. You can order my copy of my free book if you like. Have a chat with us so we can detect whether we can find a problem or not in your situation. If we can't, no problem. If we can, great. We'll try and work on it together.
And I personally will attest that since I started working with Ari and made some of these shifts, I do not believe I've lost a qualified prospect since then. I see a lot of unqualified people, but at least I know that coming in. And I haven't had people that I've wanted to work with that I've not had the opportunity to continue to work with. So thank you for that, Ari. And Matt, anything that you would like to add to our conversation?
Oh, there's so much stuff. I was taking notes. Unbelievably positive things. So first off, Ari, I love that you just at the end there slapped around everybody in a really beautiful way, in a very polite way that it is them, right? It really is. And being able to look at yourself in the mirror in the sales process is very, very powerful, humbling, but important. But the other thing that I just got off a webinar, and this was the big kind of takeaway from the webinars, people don't want to be sold to anymore. They want to have the opportunity to buy from you. And Ari, that's why I love your system. I think it's super powerful. I love just those little language tweaks are so unbelievably powerful that, listen, you all might think that that's not going to make a difference. It makes a huge difference. So I just want to thank you. I think this is fantastic. Greg, as always, being able to have experts like Ari come on and really help WSN members understand that WSN is about something a lot bigger than just bringing financial services into your practice. This is a holistic approach to be able to help, attorneys just be better.
Well, I appreciate your feedback. And I think the more we realize the only variable left for success is our changing ourselves. Once you recognize that and get out of your own way, then a huge opportunity opens up in front of you. You're right.
And if you want to know more about getting the huge opportunity, or even more importantly, sharing this episode with other attorneys that so they can join the WSN community that Greg is working really hard to build, go to joinwsn.com. And even better, make sure that you're sharing this and liking all of these episodes and subscribing to this podcast. So for Ari and Greg, this is Matt Halloran, and we'll see you on the other side of the mic very soon.
Thank you for listening to the March to a Million podcast. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available, and get in touch with our team by visiting our website at www.wealthsolutionsgroup.biz, or give us a call at 614-432-8065. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Wealth Solutions Network. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice from qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have.